Looked at him, I was like, what are you doing in my apartment? Like, why are you here?
Local college student returning to his apartment from a month away, greeted by complete strangers instead of the roommate he shared it with before. Maverick Krupe says he was totally blindsided last month when strangers suddenly moved in without any notice by his landlord.
KDKA investigator Erica Stanish is looking into what the law says and how to protect yourself as a tenant.
It all comes down to the contract you sign, and unfortunately in this case, despite a clause in Maverick's contract that appears to state any new roommates replacing a prior tenant would need approval in writing beforehand and a new lease between both parties. After talking to several local attorneys, they say what happened here was enforceable by the landlord, despite Maverick having no notice prior to walking in the door.
I opened the door, I walked in, and everything in the kitchen that was there, that I had there, was no longer there. And there was new pots, there was new pans, there was a candle.
Not only walking into what appeared to be the wrong apartment, Maverick Krupe says he found two naked strangers inside his Skyview apartment in Oakland last month.
And this lady, she was probably like 35, 40, just naked, walks out, looks at me, and starts screaming.
Krupe says he was given no notice that his former roommate apparently sublet his room, and says after reviewing his contract, he believed it was in total violation of his rights as a tenant.
If you're going to rely on the contract to have me pay you rent every month and utilities and follow whatever addendums you have in there, then you, as the person that made the contract, need to follow it to a T too.
A clause in the contract states replacing a resident or subletting is allowed when we expressly consent in writing. Going on to say the remaining resident and replacement residents must sign an entirely new lease contract. But KDKA Investigates learned the contract Maverick signed was a by-the-bed lease, meaning while his apartment was a two-bedroom with a shared living space, he was only renting, paying for, and leasing his bedroom. Several local attorneys say, therefore, Skyview was not in breach of the contract.
Because these were individual separate leases, then that's something where he's not really going to have much of a claim to the breach of the covenant of quiet enjoyment here, just because new tenants were put in there without his prior knowledge or consent.
Attorney Daniel Stoner says had Krupe and his former roommate signed a joint lease together, the subletting clause in his contract would have been effective. But even then, Stoner says it comes down to landlord discretion.
Now, it is true that the landlord, that's really at their discretion and option if they want to enforce those clauses or not. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Several attorneys KDKA talked to say most tenant-landlord contracts typically are more landlord-friendly and weigh in favor to the property owner.
Look at your contract, look at the laws that are in the city, try to see if you're getting what you're entitled to. At the end of the day, what you are, the bare minimum, hopefully at least you're getting that and people are following their contract.
So how can tenants protect themselves from a situation like this? Stoner says make sure you're reading and understand your contract and don't be afraid to ask questions.
I think those are questions that you certainly should be asking, particularly if you are entering into a lease where you're renting out an individual bedroom and you're living in a unit with other people that are renting.
If you need help with a contract, he says contact an attorney or use AI. He also suggests just having good communication with your roommates. Even so, Stoner says the landlord could have done a better job making sure this wasn't the surprise that it turned into for Maverick.
Frankly, if somebody did get hurt, the landlord could potentially be liable for all of this. This could have been easily preventable just by giving the guy a call or sending him a text or an email and letting him know this is happening.
Erica Stanish, KDKA-TV News.